He wasn't barking, and somehow that silence felt louder than every other sound in the room. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. And if you believe even the quietest souls deserve to be seen, stay with me. Now, back to the story. The shelter smelled like antiseptic and damp concrete, the kind of place where hope flickered but rarely stayed. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a pale, unforgiving glow across rows of metal kennels. Dogs barked, scratched, paced in tight circles, each one trying to be heard, to be chosen, to matter. Their voices echoed off the walls in a chaotic chorus of need. But in the far corner, where the light barely reached, there was no sound at all. He lay there, curled against the cold floor, ribs rising and falling so faintly it was easy to miss. His coat, once thick and proud, clung unevenly to his frame, sable and black dulled by time and neglect. His ears didn't perk at footsteps. His eyes didn't follow movement. He didn't react when another dog barked inches away. It was as if the world had moved on without him, and he had quietly agreed to let it. The volunteers had stopped trying to coax him forward days ago. They still filled his bowl, still cleaned his space, but they did it with the distant care reserved for something already halfway gone. He doesn't respond anymore. One of them had said earlier that morning, her voice soft but detached, like reading from a report she didn't want to believe. Stopped trying a while ago. No one knew his name. No one knew where he came from. There were no tags, no records, no story attached to him that could make him easier to love. Just a silent dog in a corner, waiting for something that might never come. The front door creaked open, letting in a slice of late afternoon light and the faint scent of rain drifting in from the street. Boots stepped across the threshold, slow and deliberate, carrying the weight of someone who had walked through harsher places than this. Daniel Hayes didn't look like a man searching for a companion. He looked like a man searching for quiet. 38, broad-shouldered, with the kind of posture that never fully left a Marine, even years after the uniform was folded away. His sleeves were rolled up despite the chill, revealing a faded tattoo along his right forearm. A German shepherd, inked in clean lines, its eyes alert, eternal. The kind of image you carry when something real has already been lost. He paused just inside the doorway, letting the noise wash over him. Most people flinched at the sound, overwhelmed by the chaos. Daniel didn't. He stood there, still, absorbing it, like a man who had learned long ago how to exist in the middle of noise without letting it inside. A volunteer approached with a practiced smile. "Looking to adopt?" she asked, hopeful but measured. Daniel shook his head slightly. "Just looking." She nodded, already used to that answer, and stepped aside. People came in all the time to look. Few stayed long. Daniel moved slowly down the aisle, boots echoing against the concrete. Dogs lunged toward the bars, tails wagging, paws scraping, eyes wide with desperate hope. Some barked louder when he passed, as if raising their voices might tip the odds in their favor. He glanced at them, acknowledged them, but didn't stop. Not yet. There was something about the noise, about the need in it, that felt too familiar. Too close to something he wasn't ready to name. Then, halfway down the row, he noticed the absence. No barking, no movement, just a patch of stillness where there shouldn't have been any. He slowed, his steps instinctively quieter, as if approaching something fragile. The corner kennel came into view, half-shadowed, almost hidden behind the louder, brighter presence of the others. And there he was. The dog didn't look up, didn't shift, didn't even acknowledge the presence of a man standing just feet away. For a moment, Daniel thought the animal might be sleeping. But then he saw it, the faint rise and fall of breath, the distant, hollow stare fixed somewhere beyond the concrete wall. "That one," Daniel said, his voice low, almost careful, like speaking too loudly might break something. The volunteer glanced over, her expression tightening just a little. "Yeah, he's been like that since he got here." Daniel didn't look away. "What's wrong with him?" She hesitated, then gave the same answer she'd given before. He just stopped responding. The words hung in the air between them, simple and heavy. Daniel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. For a second, something flickered behind his eyes, recognition, maybe, or memory. He took a step closer to the kennel, close enough now to see the details others might miss. The faint scars along the dog's flank. The way his paws were tucked in, not relaxed, but guarded. The stillness that wasn't peace, but surrender. Daniel exhaled slowly, the sound barely audible over the distant barking. Then, without asking, without announcing it, he lowered himself down. Not in front of the kennel, not demanding attention, just beside it, close enough to be there, far enough not to force anything. He rested his forearms on his knees, the tattoo on his right arm catching the cold light for a moment before settling back into shadow. "Hey," he said quietly, his voice stripped of everything but truth. "You still in there?" The dog didn't move. The room carried on around them, barking, footsteps, metal doors clanging. But in that small, shadowed corner, something shifted. It was almost nothing, easy to miss. A single, slow blink. And for the first time in days, maybe longer, the silence answered back. Daniel does not move when the blink happens, not because he does not see it, but because he understands what it costs. The smallest movement can feel like a risk when trust has already been broken too many times. So he stays exactly where he is, steady, patient, breathing slow like he used to do in the field when everything depended on not rushing the moment. The dog's eyes remain half open now, not fully engaged, but no longer completely gone. There is something there, something fragile, like a light buried under ash that has not decided whether it is worth burning again. A volunteer walks past behind them, keys jangling softly against her hip, a clipboard tucked under her arm. She glances over and pauses for a second, surprised more by the man sitting on the concrete than the dog itself. "He usually does not get that close to anyone," she says quietly, as if speaking to. Loudly might undo whatever is happening. Daniel does not look back at her. His eyes stay on the dog, not staring, not demanding, just present. "I am not trying to get close," he replies, voice low, calm. "I am just not leaving." The words settle into the space between them, simple, but carrying a weight that is not about the dog alone. The dog's ear twitches, barely noticeable. A small shift in a body that has learned to stay still to survive. Daniel notices it, but again, he does not react. He does not reward it with excitement or expectation, because he knows what pressure feels like when you are already barely holding yourself together. Minutes pass, maybe 5, maybe 10. Time moves differently in places like this, stretched thin between hope and routine. The barking around them rises and falls like waves. Some dogs are taken out for short walks. Others are led back in, leashes clicking, doors opening and closing. Life continuing in small, controlled motions. But in that corner, the air feels heavier, quieter, almost separate from the rest of the room. Daniel shifts slightly, just enough to ease the tension in his knee. The movement is slow, deliberate, nothing sudden. The dog's eyes flick toward him for the briefest second, not a full turn, not a gesture of interest, just a check, a silent question. "Are you still there?" Daniel exhales softly. "Yeah," he murmurs, almost to himself. "I am still here." The dog does not respond outwardly, but something in the way his breathing changes, just a fraction deeper, suggests that the message lands somewhere beneath the surface. The volunteer steps closer now, lowering her voice. "We tried everything," she says, not defensive, just tired. "Treats, toys, different handlers. Nothing worked. He just shut down." Daniel nods once, a small acknowledgement. "Sometimes they do that," he says, and there is no judgment in his tone, only recognition. The volunteer studies him for a moment, her eyes drifting to the tattoo on his arm, the German shepherd etched in ink, still strong, still alert, a contrast to the dog lying inches away. "You had one before?" she asks. Daniel's jaw tightens just enough to notice. "Yeah," he answers. Nothing more, the kind of answer that carries more story than words could hold. Silence settles again. But this time it feels different, not empty, not abandoned, just quiet, shared. The dog shifts his front paw, pulling it slightly closer to his chest, a protective movement, but also a sign of life, of awareness. Daniel lets his hand rest on the floor, palm down, not reaching, not offering, just existing within reach if the dog ever chooses it. The concrete is cold against his skin, grounding. Real. He remembers nights where the ground felt the same, hard, unyielding, the kind of nights where sleep did not come and silence was not peace, but something heavier, something that pressed against your chest until breathing felt like work. He does not push the memory away. He lets it sit there, because it is part of why he is here now, Part of why he does not get up and walk out like everyone else eventually does. Another few minutes pass. The room shifts again as a family enters, a child's laughter cutting through the noise, bright, hopeful. One of the dogs nearby jumps excitedly, tail wagging hard against the metal bars. The energy changes. Attention moves away from the corner, but Daniel stays, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, the dog's head lifts a fraction of an inch off the floor. Not fully, not enough to call it a movement to anyone not paying attention, but enough to change something. Enough to say that the silence is not as complete as it was before. Daniel sees it. Of course he does. But he only nods once, a quiet acknowledgement, like a promise kept without needing to be spoken. And in that small, nearly invisible shift, something begins. Not a miracle, not a transformation, just the faintest return of a presence that had almost disappeared. And for the first time since he walked into the shelter, Daniel does not feel like he is just passing through. He feels like he has found something that understands what it means to be left behind, and maybe, just maybe, what it means to come back. The decision does not come all at once. It settles slowly, like dust after movement, and Daniel feels it before he says it, before he even fully understands it. He pushes himself up from the cold concrete, his knees stiff, his hand brushing lightly against his thigh where the fabric has worn thin over time. The room feels louder now that he is standing, the barking sharper, the lights harsher, but his attention does not leave the corner. The dog has lowered his head again, not in retreat, but in something quieter, something closer to rest, as if the effort of lifting it, even that small amount, had taken something out of him. Daniel turns to the volunteer. What happens if no one takes him? He asks. The question simple, but carrying a weight that makes her pause. She shifts her clipboard from one arm to the other, glancing briefly at the kennel before answering. We keep him as long as we can, she says carefully, but space is limited, and dogs that do not show improvement, they usually get passed over. She does not finish the sentence. She does not have to. Daniel nods once. Slow, deliberate, as if confirming something he already knew. His eyes drift back to the dog, taking in the stillness, the quiet endurance of it, the way he exists without asking anything from the world anymore. And something in that reflection settles deeper, something that feels less like sympathy and more like recognition. I will take him, Daniel says, the words coming out steady, without hesitation. The volunteer blinks, caught slightly off guard. You mean foster? She asks, giving him an easy way out, a temporary step, something safer. Daniel shakes his head. No, he says, I will take him home. The room does not change. The noise continues. Life moves around them. But for a moment, it feels like everything narrows to that single choice. The volunteer studies him, searching for doubt, for uncertainty, something she can question. He might not respond, she says, her tone honest, not discouraging, just real. He might not eat well. He might not bond. He might never. She trails off. Daniel finishes it quietly. Come back, he says, and there is no fear in his voice, only understanding. He exhales slowly, glancing once more at the dog. Yeah, he adds, almost to himself. I know how that goes. The volunteer nods after a moment, something in her expression softening, shifting from caution to something closer to respect. All right, she says. I will start the paperwork. She gestures toward the small office near the front. It will take about 20 minutes. Daniel nods, but he does not follow her right away. Instead, he steps back toward the kennel one more time, lowering himself again, not as slowly as before, but still careful, still intentional. The dog does not lift his head this time, but his eyes open slightly, enough to register movement, enough to notice that the man has come back instead of leaving. Daniel rests his arm on his knee, the tattoo catching the light again, the outline of the German shepherd clear against his skin. Looks like you are stuck with me, he says quietly, not expecting a response, not needing one. The dog's gaze lingers for a second longer than before, not fully focused, but no longer empty, as if something is trying, slowly, to reconnect the pieces. Daniel stands again after a moment, this time turning toward the office. The volunteer already behind the desk, flipping through forms. The room smells faintly of paper and coffee. A small heater humming in the corner, trying to push back the chill. Name? She asks. Pen ready. Daniel hesitates, just for a second, then gives his own. Daniel Hayes. She writes it down, the scratch of pen on paper steady, grounding. And the dog? She adds, glancing up. Daniel looks back, toward the kennel through the open doorway. The corner barely visible from here. He does not have one. The volunteer nods. We can leave it blank for now, she offers, but Daniel shakes his head slightly. No, he says, his voice softer now, more thoughtful. He just has not told me yet. The volunteer gives a small, understanding smile, writing a placeholder before continuing. Signatures follow, lines filled, dates marked. The process is routine, mechanical. But for Daniel, each step feels like a quiet commitment, something deeper than paperwork, something that does not come with guarantees or outcomes. When it is done, the volunteer gathers the forms and stands. I will bring him up front, she says. We will need to use a leash, just in case. Daniel nods, stepping back into the main room. The noise greets him again, but it feels different now, less overwhelming, more distant. He walks to the corner one last time before they move the dog, crouching slightly, not fully sitting this time. We are heading out, he says, his tone calm, steady, the kind you use when you want something to feel safe even if it is not. The dog's eyes shift toward him again, slower than before, but deliberate, aware. The volunteer approaches with a leash. Moving carefully, her steps measured, she opens the kennel door with a soft metallic click, pausing to give the dog space. There is a moment where nothing happens, where the silence returns, heavy, uncertain, and then, almost imperceptibly, the dog shifts, not standing, not fully, but gathering himself, as if preparing for something he does not yet understand. Daniel does not reach out. He does not pull. He simply waits, his presence steady beside the open door, and in that quiet, fragile space. Between fear and trust, the first step begins, not forward, not yet, but inward, towards something that has not been felt in a long time, something that might, with time, become enough. The leash makes a soft clicking sound as the volunteer clips it onto the worn collar, the metal ring faintly tarnished, like it has been waiting longer than it should have for this moment. And for a second, the dog freezes, not pulling away, not resisting, just holding still as if deciding whether this change is real or just another passing moment that will disappear. Daniel stays where he is, not reaching for the leash, not stepping closer, giving the space room to breathe. The volunteer gently steps back, leaving the line loose. Take your time, she murmurs, more to the dog than anyone else, and the room seems to quiet again around that corner. Even though the barking continues somewhere behind them, distant now, less important, the dog shifts his weight slowly, his legs unsteady at first, like muscles that have forgotten their purpose. His paws press against the concrete, testing it, grounding himself, and then, with a movement so small it almost does not count, he stands. Not fully upright, not confident, but standing. Daniel watches without reacting, his face calm, his breathing even, like he has done this before in a different place, under different circumstances, where patience was the only thing that kept things from falling apart. The dog does not look at him right away. His gaze stays low, focused on the floor just beyond the threshold of the kennel, the open door waiting, the line between what he knows and what he does not. The leash hangs loose between them, not pulling, not guiding, just there, and Daniel shifts his stance slightly, stepping to the side instead of forward, creating a path that does not feel blocked. It is your call, he says quietly, his voice steady, the kind of tone that does not demand but invites. And for a long moment, nothing happens. The air stretches, time slows, and then the dog takes one step, just one, his paw crossing the line of the kennel door, touching a space he has not chosen in a long time. He pauses there, his body tense, waiting for something to go wrong, something to confirm that this is not safe. But nothing does. Daniel does not move. The volunteer does not speak. The world does not collapse. So the dog takes another step, slower this time, more deliberate, until his entire body is outside the kennel, standing in the open, the leash still loose, still without pressure. Daniel nods once, a small acknowledgement that does not need to be seen to matter. They begin to walk, not side by side, not yet, but in the same direction, the volunteer leading slightly ahead, Daniel a few feet behind, and the dog between them, unsure, cautious. each step measured, the sounds of the shelter shifting as they pass, some dogs barking louder, as if reacting to the movement, others watching in quiet curiosity. The front door comes into view, sunlight filtering through the glass, warmer than the fluorescent glow behind them. The dog slows as they approach it, his body lowering slightly, uncertain of what waits beyond. Daniel steps forward just enough to be within his line of sight, not blocking, just present. "It is just outside," he says softly. "Nothing waiting for you out there but air." The volunteer opens the door, and a cool breeze slips inside, carrying the scent of rain, pavement, and something wider, something open. The dog's nose lifts slightly, just enough to catch it. A new smell, unfamiliar but not threatening. He hesitates again, his body caught between instinct and memory, and Daniel does the only thing he knows how to do. He waits. He does not rush the moment. He does not fill the silence with noise. He lets it exist, and slowly, the dog steps forward, crossing the threshold. The light touches his coat, revealing the colors hidden beneath the dust and shadow, the deep sable tones, the black along his back, the shape of something that was once strong, once alive in a different way. They move onto the sidewalk, the concrete warmer here, the sky above wide and gray with low clouds, the sound of distant traffic humming like a steady heartbeat. The volunteer hands the leash to Daniel now, her grip gentle as she transfers it. "He is all yours," she says quietly, and Daniel takes it, not tightening his hold, just wrapping it loosely around his hand, the tattoo on his arm visible again. The image of a dog that once stood beside him in a different life. He looks down at the one standing a few feet away now, not looking back yet, but not retreating either, just existing in this new space. "We will figure it out," Daniel says, not as a promise, not as a guarantee, but as something closer to truth. The dog shifts his weight again, his ears flicking slightly at the sound of a passing car, his eyes scanning the street, taking it in piece by piece. And for the first time since he was found, he does not look like he is waiting for something to end. He looks like he is unsure of what comes next, and that uncertainty, fragile as it is, carries something different inside it, something that has not been there before, something that feels a little like possibility. The parking lot feels wider than it should, stretched out under a sky that cannot decide between rain and clearing, and Daniel walks slowly toward his truck, not pulling on the leash, not urging anything forward, just moving one step at a time like he is giving the space permission to settle. The dog follows at a distance of a few feet, not close enough to be called beside him, but not far enough to be called separate. The leash remains loose, a quiet line between two beings who are not yet connected, but no longer completely apart. A car passes by on the street, tires humming softly over wet asphalt, and the dog flinches, his body tightening for a second before stilling again. His ears flick back, then forward, catching every sound like it matters. Daniel notices, of course he does, but he does not react. He does not reassure with words or movement, because he knows some things are not calmed by noise. They are calmed by the absence of pressure, by the steady presence that does not change. They reach the truck, an older model, dark blue, paint slightly faded along the edges, the kind of vehicle that has seen years of use but still holds together. Daniel stops beside the passenger door and rests his hand lightly on the handle. He does not open it yet. Instead, he glances down, giving the dog time to understand the shape of this new moment. The dog stands still, his gaze shifting from the truck to the ground to the open space behind them, as if mapping out every possible exit, every direction he could take. His breathing is shallow but steady, not panicked, just uncertain. Daniel crouches slowly, lowering himself to the level of the dog again, his movements measured, controlled. The tattoo on his right arm visible as his sleeve shifts, the outline of the German shepherd catching the soft light. "It is just a ride," he says quietly, not expecting comprehension, just offering calm. The dog's eyes flick toward him for a second, then away, but the glance lasts longer than before, enough to show awareness, enough to show that something is being processed. Daniel reaches for the passenger door and opens it slowly, the hinge creaking softly, revealing the worn interior, the seat covered in a faded blanket, a precaution, not for cleanliness, but for comfort, for something softer than the world outside. He steps back again, creating space, never blocking, never forcing, the leash still loose in his hand, The dog looks at the open door, then at Daniel, then back at the door. His body remains still, but his head tilts just slightly. A small, almost forgotten gesture of curiosity. Daniel waits, the silence stretching between them, filled only by the distant sound of traffic and the soft rustle of wind moving through nearby trees. A drop of rain lands on the pavement, then another, light at first, barely noticeable. The dog shifts his weight, his paw lifting and setting down again in the same place, a sign of hesitation, of thought. Daniel exhales slowly, his breath steady, grounding. No rush, he murmurs, and the words are not just for the dog. They are for himself too, a reminder that not everything needs to happen all at once, that some things take time because they are meant to. The dog steps forward half a pace, then stops, his nose lowering toward the edge of the truck, sniffing the air, the scent of fabric, dust, something familiar yet distant. He pauses there, his body tense, waiting for something to change. But nothing does. Daniel remains still, the leash slack. The door open, the world quiet, and after a long moment, the dog places one paw onto the truck step, just one, testing the surface, the metal cool beneath him. He hesitates again, but this time the pause feels different, less like fear, more like consideration, and slowly, carefully, he lifts himself the rest of the way, climbing onto the seat, his movements deliberate, cautious, as if expecting the ground to shift beneath him. Daniel nods once, a small acknowledgement, then gently closes the door, the sound soft, controlled, not abrupt. He walks around to the driver's side, opens his door, and settles into the seat, the familiar creak of worn leather grounding him in the moment. For a second, neither of them moves. The engine is still off, the world outside muted by the light rain beginning to fall. Daniel glances over. The dog stands on the passenger seat, not lying down, not relaxed, just standing, his eyes scanning the interior, taking in the confined space, the newness of it. Daniel reaches forward and places the keys into the ignition, but he does not turn them yet. Instead, he rests his hand there, letting the moment breathe. "We will take it 1 mile at a time," he says. Quietly, the words simple, measured, the kind you say when you know the road ahead is not about distance, but about trust. The dog shifts slightly, his body lowering just a fraction, not fully sitting, but less rigid than before. His gaze drifts toward the window, watching the rain gather and slide down the glass in thin, uneven lines. And in that small movement, in that slight release of tension, something changes again, not dramatically, not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough to matter, enough to say that the journey has begun, not with certainty, not with ease, but with something quieter, something that does not demand to be seen to be real, something that grows in the space between silence and patience, one breath at a time. The engine turns over with a low, steady rumble, a familiar sound that fills the cab without overwhelming it, and Daniel keeps his foot light on the brake, not rushing the moment forward, the windshield catching thin streaks of rain that slide down in uneven paths, the wipers moving slow and rhythmic, back and forth like a quiet metronome marking time. The dog stiffens slightly at the vibration beneath him, his muscles tightening for a second as the world begins to move in a way he cannot yet predict. His ears flick back, then forward again, listening, measuring, deciding if this new motion is something to resist or endure. Daniel notices the shift, but his hands remain steady on the wheel, his breathing even. He eases the truck out of the parking space, the tires rolling over damp asphalt with a soft, familiar sound. Nothing abrupt, nothing sharp, just movement, the kind that does not demand attention, the kind that lets you adjust at your own pace. The street ahead is quiet, lined with small buildings and scattered trees, their leaves darkened by the rain. The sky hanging low and gray, not heavy enough for a storm, just enough to soften everything. Daniel keeps the speed slow, barely 20 miles per hour, giving the dog time to understand that nothing here is chasing him, nothing is closing in. The world is simply passing by, one frame at a time. The dog remains standing at first, his paws braced against the seat, his body angled slightly toward the window, watching the blur of shapes move beyond the glass, his reflection faint in the surface, layered over the outside world. He shifts his weight once, then again, adjusting to the motion, testing the balance, his breathing still shallow, but steady, not spiraling, just cautious. Daniel glances over briefly, not staring, just checking, and then back to the road. It is just the road, he says quietly. The words simple, stripped of anything unnecessary, the kind of statement that grounds rather than explains. The truck moves through a stop sign, tires rolling to a gentle halt before easing forward again. The rhythm of it predictable, controlled. The dog's ears catch the change, his body tensing for a fraction of a second, then easing as nothing unexpected follows. A car passes in the opposite direction, headlights muted by the rain, and the dog's gaze tracks it, not with panic, but with focus, as if learning the pattern of this new environment, the way sounds come and go without consequence. The way movement does not always mean danger. Minutes pass like this, quiet, measured, the world unfolding outside while something slower unfolds inside the cab. Daniel turns onto a longer stretch of road, the kind that runs straight for a mile or more, lined with modest houses and small front yards, mailboxes standing like markers of routine life. He keeps the speed steady, not pushing past what feels necessary. The dog's posture begins to shift, almost imperceptibly at first, his legs bending slightly, his body lowering a fraction, not fully relaxing, but no longer rigid. He glances at the seat beneath him, then at the window, then back again, as if considering a different way to exist in this space. Daniel does not comment, does not encourage. He lets the moment belong to the dog, and after another stretch of quiet, the dog lowers himself just enough for his chest to brush the seat, not lying down, not fully, but closer, a small surrender to the motion, a small acceptance that the ground is not going to disappear beneath him. Daniel's grip on the wheel loosens just a fraction, not in control, but in relief, the kind that comes from seeing something shift without forcing it. That is it. He murmurs, barely above a breath, not praise, not command, just acknowledgement. The truck passes under a row of trees, their branches arching overhead, raindrops falling in a soft, uneven pattern against the roof, the sound steady, almost soothing. The dog's eyes flick toward the ceiling for a second, then back to the window, his breathing deeper now, still cautious, but less guarded, as if the rhythm of the road and the rain is beginning to reach him in a way words cannot. They approach a red light, the truck slowing gradually, coming to a complete stop, the engine idling low, the world pausing around them. Daniel rests his hand lightly on the wheel, his other hand relaxed near the center console, not reaching across, not closing the distance, just there, present. The dog shifts again, this time lowering his body a little more, his legs folding beneath him, not fully curled, but closer to it, his head still up, still watching, but his posture no longer braced for impact. The light turns green, and the truck moves forward again, smooth, unhurried, and something in that continuity, that predictable forward motion, seems to settle deeper into the space between them. Not trust yet, not comfort, but the beginning of something that could become both, 1 mile at a time, just like Daniel said, 1 breath at a time, until the silence between them is no longer empty, but shared. The road narrows as Daniel turns off the main street, the hum of passing cars fading behind them, replaced by a quieter rhythm of tires rolling over older pavement, the kind that carries faint cracks and patched lines like a map of time. The rain has softened now, no longer falling in drops, but in a fine mist that clings to the windshield, the wipers slowing to match it, their steady motion becoming less about clearing the view and more about maintaining a rhythm, something predictable, something constant. The houses here sit farther apart, modest, worn but cared for, front porches with faded chairs, wind chimes that move gently in the damp air, and small yards edged with low fences, the kind of place where life is not loud, not rushed, just steady. Daniel eases his foot off the gas, letting the truck roll slower, the engine settling into a quieter idle as they approach a narrow gravel driveway. The tires crunch softly as they turn in, the sound different now, rougher, more textured, and the dog's ears lift slightly at the change, his body tensing for a brief second before easing again when nothing follows it. The truck comes to a gradual stop in front of a small, single-story house, paint slightly weathered, a porch light hanging above the door, not turned on yet. the windows reflecting the gray sky like muted mirrors. Daniel does not turn off the engine right away. He lets it idle, the low vibrations steady beneath them, giving the moment time to settle, to transition. He glances over. The dog is still partially lowered on the seat, not fully lying down, but no longer standing, his body angled toward the window, watching the stillness outside. There are no sudden movements here, no sharp sounds, just the faint rustle of leaves and the distant hum of a world that feels farther away now. "This is it," Daniel says quietly, not as an announcement, not as a command, just a statement of fact. The dog's eyes flick toward him for a second, then back to the window, as if measuring the difference between where they were and where they are now. Daniel turns the key, and the engine fades into silence. The absence of that sound shifts the space again, making everything feel more immediate, more real. The rain tapping lightly against the roof, the faint creak of the truck settling. Daniel opens his door slowly, the hinge giving a soft groan, cool air slipping inside, carrying the scent of damp earth and wood. He steps out, boots landing on the gravel with a muted crunch, then closes the door with care, not slamming it, not breaking the quiet. He walks around to the passenger side, each step unhurried, and when he reaches the door, he pauses for a second, his hand resting on the handle, giving the dog time to sense his presence on the other side. Then he opens it, slowly, the door swinging wide to reveal the outside world. Open, still, waiting. The dog does not move right away. His body remains where it is, his eyes shifting between Daniel and the space beyond the truck, the threshold again. Another line between what is known and what is not. Daniel steps back, just like before, creating space, not pulling on the leash, letting it hang loose between them. Same as before. He murmurs, his voice low, steady. "Your call." The dog lifts his head a little higher this time, his ears tilting forward, catching the subtle sounds of the yard. The faint drip of water from the edge of the roof, the soft movement of wind through the grass. Nothing sharp, nothing overwhelming, just quiet life. He shifts his weight, paws adjusting on the seat, and after a moment, he steps forward, placing one paw onto the truck step again. The movement more certain than it was before, still cautious, but less hesitant. He pauses there, his body half in, half out, testing the space. And when nothing changes, when the world remains still and open, he steps down onto the gravel, his paws making a soft crunch, the texture new beneath him, different from concrete, different from metal. He stands there for a second, taking it in, his body alert but not rigid, his head lifting slightly as he looks around. The yard is small, bordered by a simple wooden fence, a patch of grass damp with rain, a narrow path leading up to the porch. Nothing overwhelming, nothing crowded, just space. Daniel watches without stepping closer, his posture relaxed, his presence steady, the leash still slack in his hand. The dog takes a few tentative steps forward, each one measured, his nose lowering briefly to the ground, catching the scent of wet earth, of something that feels less confined, less controlled. He pauses near the edge of the yard, looking back once, not fully, just a slight turn of the head, enough to confirm that Daniel is still there, still within reach. Daniel nods once, a small, quiet acknowledgement, and in that exchange, brief as it is, something settles again. Not fully trust, not yet, but the beginning of recognition, the understanding that this space, this man, this moment is not going to disappear, that it might hold, that it might last. And as the rain continues to fall in soft, steady lines, the dog stands there in the open yard, no longer in a corner, no longer pressed against walls, just standing in a place where nothing is asking him to be anything other than what he is. And for the first time, that feels like enough to take another step forward. The rain settles into a steady whisper, thin lines tracing the edges of the roof and dripping from the corners in a slow, patient rhythm. And Daniel does not move toward the porch right away. He stays where he is, a few feet behind, giving the yard time to become something more than just another unfamiliar place. The dog stands near the center of the small patch of grass, his paws damp now, the scent of wet soil rising around him. And for a moment, he simply exists there, not retreating, not searching for an exit, just taking in the space one detail at a time. His ears flick at the soft clink of a wind chime hanging near the porch, the sound gentle, uneven, carried by the breeze. His head tilts slightly, a small gesture, but one that has not appeared before. Curiosity threading its way through caution. Daniel notices it, but like before, he does not interrupt it. He lets it belong to the dog. The leash remains loose, almost forgotten between them, the line slack enough that it no longer feels like restraint, just connection. The dog lowers his nose to the ground again, tracing a faint path along the edge of the yard, each step slow, deliberate, as if mapping the boundaries of this new world. He pauses near the fence, sniffing the wood, the scent of rain-soaked grain and something older, something settled. Then he lifts his head, looking beyond it, not with urgency, not with the need to escape, just with awareness. Daniel shifts his weight slightly, gravel crunching under his boots, the sound soft but present, and the dog glances back, not fully turning, just enough to confirm that the man is still there, still steady. Daniel meets the glance with the same quiet acknowledgement. No words this time, just presence, and after a second, the dog looks forward again, the moment passing without tension, without fear. The porch light flickers on automatically as the sky darkens, casting a warm glow across the damp boards, a contrast to the gray outside. Daniel turns slowly and walks toward it, not checking if the dog will follow, not calling him, just moving as if this is the next natural step. The leash trails loosely from his hand, and for a second, the dog remains where he is, watching, measuring the distance, the choice, and then, almost without thinking, he takes a step, then another, following not because he is told to, but because the space between them feels different now, less like separation, more like something that should be closed. He reaches the base of the porch as Daniel steps up onto it, the wood creaking softly under the added weight. Daniel pauses at the door, reaching into his pocket for the keys, the faint jingle breaking the quiet just enough to be noticed. The dog stops at the bottom step, his body still, his eyes fixed on the small rise in front of him. The threshold again, higher this time, unfamiliar. Daniel unlocks the door slowly, the metal turning with a soft click. Then he opens it just enough for a line of warm light to spill out into the dim yard. The interior carries a different scent, something dry, something lived in, wood and fabric, and the faint trace of something familiar that lingers without being named. Daniel steps inside first, not closing the door, leaving it open behind him. A clear path, not a trap. He sets the keys down somewhere out of sight, the soft thud of them against a surface echoing lightly. Then he steps back into view, just inside the doorway, not reaching out, not calling, just there, waiting. The dog remains at the base of the porch, the rain still touching his coat, his body caught between staying and stepping forward. His ears flick at the new sounds inside, the subtle shifts of a house settling, the quiet hum of something electrical, nothing loud, nothing sharp, just different. Daniel lowers himself slightly, not all the way down, but enough to reduce the height difference, to make the space feel less imposing. Same rules, he says softly, his voice steady. You decide. The dog watches him, his eyes holding there a moment longer than before, and then he lifts one paw onto the first step, the wood firm beneath him. He pauses, listening, waiting, and when nothing changes, when the world does not shift or close in, he climbs the rest of the way up, reaching the porch, the boards damp under his paws. The light warmer here, closer. He steps toward the doorway, slow, careful, his head lowering slightly as he crosses the threshold. The change in surface immediate, wood replacing gravel, dry replacing wet, and for a moment, he stands just inside, not moving further, not retreating, just there. Daniel does not step closer, he does not break the space. He lets the dog take it in, the quiet of the room, the absence of echo, the way the air feels still, contained, safe in a way that is not yet understood. The dog's body remains tense, but not rigid, his breathing steady, his eyes moving slowly from one corner to another, and then back to Daniel. And in that look, something shifts again, something small but undeniable, not trust, not yet, but recognition, the beginning of understanding that this place, this moment, this man, is not another thing to survive, but something that might, with time, become something else entirely. The house holds its silence in a different way than the shelter ever did. Not empty, not abandoned, but settled, like something that has learned how to breathe without noise. And Daniel does not turn on any more lights than necessary, just the one near the doorway, letting the rest of the space remain dim, softer, less overwhelming. The dog stands just inside the threshold, his paws still, his body angled slightly toward the open door behind him, as if keeping that exit within reach, just in case. The leash hangs loose between them, barely noticeable now, and Daniel takes a slow step to the side, not forward, giving the room shape without closing it in. "You can look around," he says quietly, his voice low enough that it blends into the air rather than cutting through it. The dog does not move at first, his eyes shifting from the floor to the walls to the faint outlines of furniture, a couch worn but clean, a small table near the window, a rug that softens the sound of movement. Nothing sharp, nothing crowded, just space that does not demand anything from him. Minutes pass in that quiet, the kind that stretches without pressure, and slowly, the dog takes a step, then another, his paws making almost no sound against the wood. He moves along the edge of the room, not crossing through the center, keeping distance, mapping the boundaries the way he did outside, his nose lowering occasionally to catch the scent of something unfamiliar, then lifting again, always checking, always aware. Daniel watches without following, his posture relaxed, his hands resting loosely at his sides, the tattoo on his right arm visible in the dim light, the image of a dog that once stood beside him, a memory that does not need to be spoken to be present. He walks toward the kitchen slowly, not looking back to see if he is being followed, just moving as if this is normal, as if nothing here is urgent. He fills a bowl with water, the sound of it pouring steady and soft, then sets it down near the edge of the room, not too close, not too far, a place that can be approached without feeling cornered. "There you go," he murmurs, more to the space than to the dog, and then he steps away, giving distance again. The dog watches the movement, his ears flicking at the sound of water settling, the faint ripple in the bowl catching his attention. He does not approach right away, but the focus shifts, his body turning slightly in that direction, curiosity threading deeper now. Daniel moves to the other side of the room and lowers himself into a chair, the wood creaking softly under his weight. He leans forward slightly, resting his forearms on his knees, the same posture he held in the shelter, the same quiet presence, not demanding, not calling, just there. The room settles again, the rain outside continuing its soft rhythm against the windows, and after a long moment, the dog takes a step toward the bowl, then another, each one careful, deliberate. He pauses halfway, looking back once, just enough to confirm that nothing has changed, that the man is still where he was, still steady. Daniel nods once, a small, almost invisible motion, and the dog continues forward, reaching the bowl. He lowers his head slowly, sniffing first, testing, and then cautiously. He drinks, the sound quiet, almost hesitant at first, then a little steadier, a simple act, but one that carries weight in its return. Daniel exhales softly, not in relief, but in recognition. He does not interrupt it, does not praise it. He lets it be what it is, a step that belongs entirely to the dog. When the dog lifts his head, a drop of water falls back into the bowl, rippling outward, and for a moment, he just stands there, not retreating, not rushing away, just existing in that space. The distance between them unchanged but no longer sharp. Daniel shifts slightly in his chair, his hand brushing against something at his side. A faint metallic sound follows, soft but clear, and the dog's ears lift at it, his gaze moving toward Daniel. The sound of the dog tag, worn edges catching the light as it swings gently against Daniel's hand. He does not raise it, does not present it, just lets it rest there, part of him, part of the moment. The dog watches, his head tilting just slightly, a gesture that carries something new, something that was not there before, not just awareness, but connection. And after a long second, he takes a step toward Daniel, then stops, the distance still there, but smaller now, less defined. Daniel does not move, does not close it. He lets the dog choose the space, the time, and in that quiet room, with the rain tapping softly outside and the air holding steady around them, something begins to settle into place, not loudly, not all at once, but in the kind of way that lasts, the kind that does not need to be seen to be real, the the kind that grows in the spaces where nothing is forced and nothing is taken away, just given time. And in that time, two lives that once stood apart begin, slowly, to find a way to stand closer, not because they have to, but because they can.